Welcome to the Bold Lounge podcast. My name is Lee Burgess, and I will be your host. If you're anything like me, you love hearing inspiring stories of people who have gone on bold journeys and made a positive impact in the world. This podcast is all about those kinds of stories. Every week, we'll hear from someone who has taken a leap or embarked on an extraordinary journey. In addition to hearing their stories, we'll also learn about their bold growth mindset that they use to make things happen. Whether they faced challenges or doubts along the way, they persisted and ultimately achieved their goals. These impactful stories will leave you feeling motivated and inspired to pursue your own bold journey. I believe everyone has a bold story waiting to be freed. Tune in and get ready to be inspired. Welcome to the Bold Lounge. Today we have Henna Pryor. She is a #1 top producer and leader at a $2 billion staffing firm for over 14 years. She's been invited to speak to global organizations including Google, Workday, Johnson & Johnson, and JP Morgan Chase. You might have seen her in Forbes, Real Simple, or Fast Company. She's also an incurable chocoholic and a 32nd generation Pakistani princess, which means absolutely nothing anymore and comes with zero perks, but it's still pretty cool. Finally, which is I'm excited to talk about, she's a TEDx speaker with an upcoming talk and is publishing her first book, Awkward and Upward, in 2023. Her immigrant parents are very, very proud. And so are we. I'm so excited to meet you, Henna, and what an introduction. So I think the first thing we can start off with, is there anything you'd add to that?
Oh gosh, I mean, the fact that I'm relentlessly awkward at all times, but am proud of that fact. And that I'm just really excited that you asked me to do this. I think, women and people in general being more bold in their lives and in their choices is a shared mission that I have with you. So I'm excited to be here and chat with you.
Excellent. So we'll jump right in. And we talked about this a little bit. How would you define bold? What does the definition look like in your world?
So when I thought about this word, looking at the name of your podcast, what immediately came to mind was, I spend a lot of time on Canva and typing, as I know you do too. And when I thought about bold, I thought about when we write text and we make it bold, it's not a new font or a new typography. It's taking what's already there and leaning into it, making it bigger, making it more, making it just more noticeable, a little more grandiose, a little deeper, a little more noticeable, right? So when I think about bold, I think about taking what already exists and amping it up a couple of notches, whether that's our behavior, whether that's how we show up, whether that's how we approach a circumstance in the world. But, taking a little bit more of a chance, being a little more noticeable, being a little more seen. That's how I think of bold.
Yeah, I love that. It really is amplifying what is already there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I say is that I think everyone has boldness within them. It just needs to be freed, right? It's just in there. And, I'm a living example of that. I think it was eking out along the way in different ways across my career and my life, but it's full out, there now, being able to do what I do.
Yeah.
So I think that's an excellent definition. One of the things, and in working in your industry and with your clients and the folks that you work with, one of the challenges is when people don't know they're bold or they're afraid to take that first step. Mm-hmm. And I think that first step is one of the absolute hardest steps. And you, me, anyone that's coaching someone or helping an organization, you can't make them. They have to do that. What do you think are the characteristics of organizations who are ready to be bold or ready to take that first step?
I think that there is a step that too many of us skip, and that is peeling back the layers to figure out why it's hard in the first place. So I will give my own personal example. I think most people who meet me today or know me today would describe me as somebody who's bold, who's a risk taker, who doesn't come across as shy. But what people don't know about me is I grew up in a South Asian household. My dad was born in India. My mom was born in Pakistan. And while neither of them are shy, culturally, there was a strong don't stand out too much, stay humble, stay quiet in a room where other people are talking. This is not your place to speak up. And that, again, is no fault of my parents. It's a little bit of a cultural thing. And so there was a lot of deep-rooted conditioning around what can I say? What can I self-advocate for am I allowed to speak my desire or amplify my voice in this room? And so sometimes when we, are encouraging people, be bolder in your organization, be bolder in your career, be bolder with your innovation, and they're struggling to do it, I wonder how much time has actually been spent peeling back some of those layers as to why is it hard to even access those feelings in the first place? And usually there's some level of conditioning that has to be addressed first.
I was just thinking as you were talking about, is there a connection between being awkward and being bold? Because I definitely feel awkward.
Yeah. I am so glad you asked that question, and I was hoping that you would. 100%. I have never met a person who I would describe as bold, and I'll add to that confident, that is not awkward. There is no such thing. There are people who are awkward and try to hide it and eliminate it. And there are people who are awkward in conversation, in their situations, in their minds, and embrace the hell out of it. And those are the people that we call bold, risk takers, confident. They don't try to eliminate it. They lean into it because they know that you can't get to bold without a little bit of fumble, stumble, imperfection, ungraceful behavior. There is no way to get there without going through the awkward first. You have to.
Yeah, I think it's realizing you're human and that it's okay to be human. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be imperfect.
Yeah.
Let's just say it. Like too many people, I think, one of the things as I was like going through a phase in my reboot of myself is, perfectionism. And did I have it? And I didn't realize I had so much of it going on when I like went through the processes to understand kind of my personality and some of the things that I had done the majority of my corporate career. So realizing like imperfection actually is something that is beautiful. Like in my world, I think as I get older in age, like I'm not thinking about doing anything drastic, like but I actually think the wrinkles are good. Mm-hmm. Like, when I smile, I have a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, but I think, to me, that means I got some mileage on my smile. Like I've been smiling a lot. So anyway, so I just think that imperfections lead to greater understanding and valuing your experience. And also, like you said, leaning in.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a second. So leaning in sometimes in a certain setting is easier said than done.
Yeah.
And even you and I have talked about, and this silly example is the hat. Mm-hmm. So like I didn't really show pictures of me in a hat or doing anything. It's not a big deal. I don't need a badge or an award for wearing a hat. What I mean by that is like I couldn't actually be truly authentically me. One, because I thought I'd be judged. I thought I didn't look as good, or, who knows? Like I have my own confidence issues every now and then with regard to that. So, but it was like, now it's like, yeah, I wear my hat. And it's like a statement for me, like, okay, I'm okay being me. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. As people are trying to take steps into that, and you might have experienced yourself, I think there's boldness in there as well. Yeah. What would you advise people kind of looking in that zone of like, am I in the right space and am I being truly authentically me?
Yeah, I have two angles that I would explore this from. One is I'll just own, I'm not someone who naturally slows down easily. I run at a fast pace. And so one of my own growth edges is slowing my thoughts down long enough to understand why those feelings are coming up. So using your example, being a little more authentic in your dress, I just bought you talked about the hat. I just bought a pair of gold glitter Converse high tops that I hope to wear for speaking gigs. I haven't worn them yet, confession, because I'm still a little in my head about how that looks, right?
Yeah.
And so first examination is slowing down those thoughts long enough to understand where they're coming from. And so what I have discovered is, we talked about conditioning earlier. We have been conditioned for many, many years to fit in with social norms, fit in, whether it's with our organizations, the culture that they've created or sort of set, whether, outwardly or just implicitly. Everyone sort of dresses this way in the office, or everyone shows up this way, examining what are those social norms, and then also just giving grace and space to, it is natural for me to want to fit in with social norms. This is the whole tribal human thing that we all talk about in the professional and personal development industry. If you didn't fit in, you either exiled from the tribe or were at risk of death, right? So this is
You get voted off.
exactly voted off the island. Exactly. So understanding that that's where it's coming from, I think can release some of the power of it being so internal. There is such an external component to it. But then the second part of this, again, I feel like I'm using this word a lot today, but I think it's really important, is a little bit of slow and intentional conditioning. So realistically, when we're talking about organizations, we can't promise that psychological safety is always there. Will they appreciate if I wear this bold print that's culturally meaningful to me, or will they, have something to say about it? If we don't know, then I'm a firm believer of, dipping a toe in the water. How can we test a little bit to make sure that this is an environment to bring my whole authentic self? So maybe instead of the, sparkly sneakers, I'll start with some regular sneakers with my blazer, just see how that lands. And 99% of the time, it's fine, right? 99% of the time, it's fine. We as humans, we catastrophize why, this is not going to work, or what this person is going to say. And I think part of being bold in our behavior, and frankly, part of being awkward in our approach, is understanding that what's on the other side of it is never as massive and huge as it is in our heads. Most of the time it's not. But if we have that fear, we can always test the water and play with it a little bit and see where it starts to go into an edge of discomfort before we make that big, bold step. I don't think it has to be all or nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I want to dig into fitting in.
Yeah.
I'm only a year and a half into being an entrepreneur, but I don't know what to call the first part of my life. So I call it my corporate career. I got to come up with a better name for it. But
yeah,
if I think about that, I knew how to fit in. I knew what to do. I'm a fairly smart person. I know when to say things, when to not say things, but I said the thing that I shouldn't say in the meeting. I made the point that no one else would say out loud and everyone was thinking. I stood up for things when they needed to be stood up for and no one was going to do it. And I knew the political fallout from it, but I could sleep at night. I knew that I was true to me from that perspective. But it's such an interesting, psychological experiment, I guess, being in the corporate world. And I'm not dissing the corporate world either. I had a tremendous career and I'm very thankful for all my experiences, every single one of them, good, bad, and ugly, because I feel like I learned from all of them. Easier to say that on the flip side of something while you're in it, but I truly genuinely mean that. But when do you know when to fit in, or like you said, it's normal to want to? Then I totally get that from just like you said, the tribal human side of you want to be part of a group, you want to be welcomed, you want to be accepted.
Right.
That's what you were talking about, and I'm talking about when is it okay to stand out and be true to you. And I think that's harder for people, certainly in some of the situations that they're in. Can you think of a time in your career, in your life, that you took that bold moment where you didn't want to fit in, you wanted to stand out?
Yeah, I'll be, kind of transparent with you. I'm experiencing a little bit of it right now. I've got a partnership that, we speak on certain topics, and there is a part of me that's fighting back a little bit against one of the approaches that we take. I think that it's not nuanced enough. I don't think it's taking into consideration some women's issues, some marginalized groups issues. And so I'm actually right now at a precipice of, do I stand up for this? Do I want to make waves? Everybody likes me right now. I'm part of a community. And do I want to make waves? And so I'll tell you, the barometer for this, not to make it overly simplistic, is I have to be very brutal and honest with myself about, what do you value more? What are your values, and what do you value more? So right now I have a values conflict going on between standing up for what I think is right, and justice and equality, and being a voice for that. And I'm just, confession, a value around being liked, recovering people pleaser here, still, in that work, and wanting to be part of community, wanting to be part of a group, wanting to be part of a team. I do have a value around achievement and recognition and likability. Whether I like to say that out loud or not, that's just a fact. So these two values right now are in tension. And so what I'm sitting with, frankly, as we speak, today, is that's a choice. I have to risk one for the other. But ultimately, every time I find myself at that choice point, I almost always find that the risk of losing, the likability is never as high as I envision it in my head, because I'm not coming out, guns blazing. You guys are idiots. You're not thinking about that. Of course not. It's being done with respect. It's being done in a way that feels judicious. And so I have to have that conversation with myself. I'm in conflict. I have to make a choice. But also, Henna, get out of your own mind monster here. The reality is the risk will feel like a risk, but it's not as catastrophic as you probably are making it in your head. So when you make that choice, do it and know that you'll deal with it on the other side.
Yeah. So values conflict. In my mind, I was visualizing like, when your car gets stuck in the mud and it just kind of the tire spinning till you put something either to you get a push or you actually put something there to get the tire out of whatever it may be, the divot. But what I was visualizing was that once you get out of your mind, like you almost have to look at it from above sometimes. Here's the conflict. And here's where the value is higher and I'm going for it. And then you realize, like you said, that it wasn't as high as you thought it was. I don't know anyone that's like, I don't want to be liked or
right.
I don't care about being liked. I mean, I want to be liked too. And I think that was some of the hardest times when I was in those moments that you just described. I think you described it so well. I don't think I ever really defined it specifically as that, but it was like a moment of, I know if I do this, I'm going to be unpopular. I know if I do this, I'm probably not going to get that promotion. I know if I do this, I may get fired.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I was in those types of situations, but I knew what I was doing was right, was ethical, was moral, was for our patients or the safety or whatever it may be at whatever situation it was. And it trumped it. You know what I mean?
And I'd add that tactically, there's anchor phrases that I lean on when I want to be more bold, right? When I want to make that decision. So an example of something that I often say is, and I say this sort of tongue in cheek, like, I'm about to say something and it's really hard for me. And I hope you'll take it the way I intend it, right? Or I hope you'll hear it the way that I hope that, the way in my mind, I hope you'll receive it, right? So I'm priming that I'm saying something. And I'm also priming that I'm bringing this to you because I care, not because I think you're an idiot or not because I'm just trying to start a fight, right?
Exactly. I don't want to give you a hard time. I don't want to do anything other than have us be successful. But if I don't say this, for me, it would be going against who I am and my values. And that's the part you say to yourself. But I think I love that you're like, you can always intro what you need to do, kindness and professionalism and respect.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And then you get it out and it almost feels like a relief.
Yeah, it is. Well, and I love that you said that, it is nerve-wracking. And part of, I think for me, the relationship between bold and awkward you mentioned earlier is there is a misconception about what it looks like to do something boldly for the people who do it. A lot of the boldest conversations I've had, let me be clear, my heart was racing. My armpits were sweating. I wanted to throw up right beforehand. So it doesn't mean that we do it clean. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. One of my little catchphrases lately has been do it awkward, do it messy, but do it. It doesn't have to be pretty. And even the people you look at them and you're like, oh, they nailed it. I just did a thing on stage the other day in front of a bunch of peers and they all were like, oh, Henna, you did great. You did great. And I said, did you see my hand shaking? They said, no. I said, my hand, I thought everybody must have been able to see it. It was trembling because it was new material for me. I wasn't super comfortable with it. So I got a little nervous. Nobody saw it, but man, I felt it. So I was doing it awkward, doing it messy, but to them, I was doing it bold. Same time.
Yeah, it's that vantage point, how you see yourself sometimes is not how others see you, right?
Right.
And that could be positive or negative. Like you could be like, that was the best. And someone would be like, no,
yeah.
it really,
yeah.
Your inner circle that can tell you that. Or more likely and more often, you think you didn't do well or that it didn't go like it should. And I experience, honestly, this daily, especially now doing the podcast. Like, I'm not a pro. I've just begun. And, I feel like I say that a lot. Maybe I'm just always starting new things, but it's like that goes back into, you're actually most likely doing better than you think you are.
Right.
And I love that you gave that as an example because it is very normal to be nervous or to have butterflies. And I always feel like if I don't have them, like, am I doing something that I should be doing? Because I feel like that's actually the indicator of like, I'm doing the right thing because it makes me a little nervous. I'm on not an edge, but it's just like uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. And I want to honor exactly what you're doing. Like, kudos to you for not waiting until you have the professional podcast studio and your ducks in a row. That is what keeps people from being bold, right? And so you're like, I have something I want to say. I feel like I can have conversations with people that would be exactly of the nature of what I'm trying to convey here. Let's just do it. We're going to do it awkward. We're going to do it messy, but we're going to get started. And that's what most people don't do because they're looking for the big, bold step, right? Bold is this. Bold is doing it. And I love that.
Yeah. Or you can do it over.
Exactly.
The intro today, I will re-record because I bumbled it. But it's like, okay, I can do that and it's okay. And there's technology that helps me with that and those types of things. So I think even being able to know there are do-overs, you can, and you don't have perfect coming out. I have heard that a lot. The reason for the podcast is just to be a catalyst for people meeting incredible people who have a story that most likely someone connects with. And it brings value or inspires, or it helps someone know they're not the only one that's felt that or experienced it. And also, I hope I help those that are sharing the story themselves to know that you're incredible. You're an incredible person. You are an incredible person, Henna, for what you do and how you do it and what you talk about. And more people need to know you. That's my only intention. There's no revenue or anything like that. And I spend time marketing anyone that I actually talk with. So the point of that is there's so many awesome people out there with bold stories and bold journeys. That's the intention, is connection between really awesome people and their journey with others. And that's to me what it's all about. So that's why I get excited and I realize I don't have to be perfect at it, because it really isn't about me or fumbling on some intro or outro. But I think I'd like to also tell people it's not as hard as you think.
And I think that if you really think about, at least for me, the people who I admire most that I would describe as bold, bold leaders, bold women, bold athletes, celebrities, you name it, the people I would describe as my most relatable, bold, inspirations are the people who show me the messy middle. I don't want to see your, Wimbledon win without knowing what it took to get there. I don't want to see that you're the CEO of a company that's huge and it looked flawless along the way. I don't want to see that, because then it's scary. It makes it scarier. It feels unattainable. I feel less than. Show me the messy middle. And I love that in the spirit of this podcast, you're literally embodying it along the way, right? That's the story. That's the journey. And here we are actually living it while we talk about it.
One of the things you said, and I've heard someone, I think it was Jen Gottlieb, say, your mess is your message. And I mentioned this in another podcast, but I mention it again because I think it's exactly what you just hit upon. It makes you real. It makes it she got to that point or did this, but it wasn't as smooth as you may think. There's someone that wrote a book, be as happy as you are on social media. Sometimes on social media and these other outlets, people portray life is perfect.
Yeah.
And there are no ups or downs. It's just all ups. And so I think we're both here to tell everybody that's listening that there's both. And, sometimes it's rough, and it may be even in the same day or the same hour that things happen. So I love that. And I'd love to talk about the book. So as we kind of segue from the boldness and awkwardness, how did you get the idea for the book, and how would you describe the book to the listeners?
Yeah, so the book will be out next year. I'm really excited about it. The working title is Awkward and Upward, but we'll see if we change it at all. I will tell you that the catalyst for the book was, I know you and I are both fans of Brené Brown and other people that play in these spaces. And she spoke a lot in the last decade about vulnerability and courage and shame. And what I observed in a lot of the leaders I worked with was this jump to vulnerability that wasn't always authentic vulnerability, because they heard it was important and they heard it was sexy to be vulnerable as a leader. So there was this kind of uptick of faux vulnerability, right? I'm having a really hard day, team. All right, now back to work, right? This was this faux vulnerability. And so to me, there was a middle step or a subset that was missing, which is before you can be truly and authentically vulnerable as a leader, as a team member, as a friend, you need to first be willing to be awkward. A little imperfect, a little ungraceful, a little stumbly, a little fumbly, a little, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. You need to let that part of yourself show. You need to crack the shell of the egg a little bit and let that part show. And if you can get comfortable with that, then you will be well on your way to vulnerability, to courage, and the rest. But it felt like there was too many people skipping over this really critical step. And so the book was born from this notion that the key to taking more risks and being more bold is not eliminating awkwardness, but rather embracing and conditioning for it instead.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's important and most likely highlighting this is like, it's on your time, right?
Right.
I love that you said faux vulnerability, because there's so much out there that it's sometimes hard to know what's real and what isn't. And I think as a new person who's opening up and like sharing my life with people who I don't know very well, it's hard. Like it doesn't feel normal to me. I'll just say that. I'll be honest. A community that I'm hopefully helping and connecting. Like the helping and connecting, that's what I do. But, to get in the algorithm, you have to have a video or you have to do this or that. And that's where the faux stuff, I think, comes in for me. Sometimes to get out there and to be noticed or to be heard, you feel like you have to be a little bit inauthentic, I guess. So I love that you're like saying that, you embrace it, you lean into it. But when do you know, don't go there or don't be that because it gets you a higher seen rate on, impression rate on LinkedIn or something like that?
Yeah, I think we're in a little bit of an uptick of that on LinkedIn, especially, which is probably where your question is coming from. Yeah. It seems like, LinkedIn historically has been a business platform that has prioritized professional leaning posts. And lately it seems as though the posts of people with selfies saying, I've been crying all morning and had a really hard day, seem to get favored by the algorithm, right? And it makes you wonder, is this true vulnerability or true imperfection expressed, or is this a ploy for likes, right? Yeah. Ultimately, that's going to come down to who or what are you doing it for? Mm-hmm, exactly. Right. So if I'm posting something on LinkedIn, then this isn't a conversation anybody else is going to have for me. I have to have it with myself. Am I sharing this because I know it's the type of post that will get attention? Or am I sharing this because it's real to me and it's on my heart and I think somebody else will resonate with it? Yeah. I will confess very uncomfortably right now that there have been times where I've started a post that I think I, started it with like, this would get this, people would like this. Mm-hmm. And then I erased it because I was like, no, I'm not doing it for the right reason.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, I went from 30,000 impressions a day to like maybe 6 now.
Right.
But it's 6,000 impressions to me that meant something. That's the way I'm looking at it now. Yeah. I tried to do the video thing and it did get me more impressions, but I'm like, it didn't feel right, so transparently, that's why I stopped doing it every day.
Yeah.
I don't mind every now and then. And again, I go back to like feeling awkward, being bold, but being authentic. Mm-hmm. Like that's probably like the third characteristic there that I think is important. And I don't know if you're awkward and bold and inauthentic. I think that's probably the most authentic you could probably be when you're in those states. But I think that's something just for people to understand that it's okay in a way, like not to be in that club or fit in, because you want more people to see your message. You want people to see you, but there's ways to do it other than social media. And there's ways to be a thought leader that aren't on a social media platform, which are very advantageous. And again, I'm not saying those are not a good way to reach people, but I think sometimes they can maybe make people do things that they normally wouldn't have done because we're all just, in the way trying to reach more people with our message or to support or help or share an experience.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest reframes for me has been, Seth Godin talks about it. I can't remember who originated it, but this idea of, 1,000 true fans, or, my friend Brittany Hodak refers to it as super fans. Mm-hmm. I recognize that in the last decade, 2 decades, we've kind of grown up in this likes, community, audience. And I think we're starting to see that shift now of people realizing that this doesn't actually translate to much, to the marketers. They may say, oh, great, they have a big audience, but I would much rather have, 100, but let's say 10 super fans who really believe in my message and will galvanize it and help other people feel more comfortable embracing their awkwardness or help other people feel more bold in their choices. Mm-hmm. Those people ultimately are creating the ripple effect that I set out to create or want to see. And it is daily work to say these numbers are vanity metrics. It does not mean that the message is spreading. It does not mean that it's working in a certain way. It's just one way of looking at it. But for people who are people pleasers or recovering people pleasers, it's hard. It's a daily reminder that this is how it needs to be done.
I wonder if there's a people pleaser in all of us, right? So
Mhm.
I think naturally there probably is. Like, again, it goes back to
Yeah,
likability and wanting to fit in and wanting to be part of something. And yeah, so I wanted to point that out because I know a lot of people have talked about it, and certainly I'm experiencing and seeing it in my, I love that vanity metrics. And it's not about that. If 6,000 people and that's still really good, look at it, that's great. If six people look at it, that's great too. Like you said, it's not about the numbers. It's about one, your message, and then the meaning of the message, and then what it means to who's receiving it. So I think
right.
that's the other thing we may not realize is our words, our actions, and how we communicate with people, no matter what the venue or the way that we do it, there's value there for someone. And I think we may underestimate that, right?
Of course. And I think we can all be comfortable in the knowing that all of us stumble and fumble and trip over our own 2 feet and occasionally say the wrong thing. Even the most, the Sarah Blakeleys and the Elon Musks and God knows who else, the people we perceive as the boldest visionaries, thinkers, the behaviors are all seems like bold behavior after another. These people are all helplessly awkward on a daily basis and they own it, right? They just own it. And that's the difference.
What is your awkwardness?
Yeah.
Do you have that shirt yet? You need
I think I need 20 shirts, but I think that, if I could encourage anyone who's trying to chase bold and having a hard time accessing it, it's, the opposite of bold, or the thing that will most quickly block your clear path to being more bold is trying to avoid the awkwardness on your way there.
Mhm. Yeah, love that. Want to talk just real quickly about something super exciting. The book, when does the book come out?
Summer, fall 2023 is when we're targeting right now.
So we will make sure that the information below and the
Thank
link so
you.
that they can track that, go to your website and find it when it's out. Looking so forward to that. But you have an exciting thing coming up in the fall, which is your TEDx talk.
Yes.
And so many of us are cheering you on, so excited for you, looking forward to it. I wanted to ask, because some of us will never even be able to experience, because it's very hard to be a TEDx speaker or to be a TED Talk speaker, and you're kind of in that elite group now. What have you learned the most from the experience about you?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny, it's been very top of mind, especially yesterday. I was spending some time thinking about this. I have done a good bit of speaking in my life. I was the MC of my high school prom fashion show, right? I was the commencement speaker of my grad school class. Yeah, so my transition to keynote speaking was only surprising to me, right? Everyone who knew me was like, yeah, Henna, we knew this, right? We knew this was coming. But what has been surprising to me about the TEDx experience is that no matter how comfortable you get on stages, in Zoom rooms, with galvanizing your message, the minute you level up, all those same mind monsters come right back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I've spoken in front of now audiences of 800 to 1,000 people. This TEDx audience isn't going to have that many people in it, but I know that it's going to be a video that will be shareable. And so all of a sudden, those same doubts, those same fears, those same insecurities that I kind of thought I had shaken off pretty well have come running back in. And it's been a really healthy reminder to me that anytime you are playing at your growth edge, anytime you are pushing against the rings of that comfort zone, it's going to feel awkward all over again. And that is, while not something I'm enjoying, to be honest, exactly where I should be, because it means I'm playing a bigger game. I'm playing bolder than I've ever played before. And so I just have to keep reminding myself in this journey, if this is what you want, if this is your goal, get messy, get awkward. This is what you're teaching. This is what you're talking about in the TEDx, and you're living it. But I will just confess that I think it took me a bit by surprise how much these things come back and into your brain waves and have to be addressed in real time.
Yeah, so being awkward can be cyclical, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Just the vision of like your awkward cycle, like as you get to that growth edge that you talked about, it may come back in. You're like, whoa, I thought I tackled that. I thought I didn't feel like that. I thought I didn't, oh, there's a shadow I didn't realize was coming back into my head again. And then, but the cool part is you have the tools, the strategies, how to bootstrap yourself forward, right? Versus the first time you might have experienced that awkward factor.
Yeah, I truly think that the easiest way to think about awkwardness, and obviously we'll get into this in the TEDx and in the book, but building your awkwardness muscle is indeed a muscle, not dissimilar to physical fitness. If you are lifting weights on a regular basis and then you either never up the weight, then you kind of get used to it and it doesn't really feel like much anymore. Or if you don't touch that weight, I go on vacation for 2 weeks, I haven't done anything. Anybody who's done that knows that first one back is like, ugh, this sucks, right? Awkwardness is the same way. If you're in it, if you're conditioning for it, if you're putting yourself in these situations of, deliberate micro stressor, deliberate discomfort on a regular basis, it won't feel like such a shock to the system the next time something like this comes up. But similar to picking up a bigger weight than you've ever lifted before, a bigger, bolder move at your growth edge is going to feel more awkward. But I think it's being a little bit conditioned for it when it comes, right? It's only terrifying if you've never been in that situation in any microdose before.
Yeah.
But if you're slowly creating your life in a way that you're putting yourself in those situations, you can navigate these bigger ones more easily.
Yeah. So you adapt a bit, but that first one is probably the hardest one.
Always.
And then you realize you survive it and you realize through it. And I think in every single one, I don't know if you agree, you learn from it. Like, oh, where did that pop up from? Oh, I didn't know I felt like that. Why am I so hard on myself? Right. So I think the learning's in there. So I've really appreciated talking with you today, and I'm sure the listeners have taken many, many pieces from this talk that they can apply. So thank you very much for being on the Bold Lounge, Henna.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Bold Lounge podcast. Through the continuum of bold stories, vulnerability to taking a leap, you will meet more extraordinary people making a positive impact for others through their unique and important story. By highlighting these stories, we hope to inspire others and share the journey of those with a bold mindset. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and look forward to sharing the next bold journey with you.